Sukkah, first chapter, 11th Mishnah. Ha'oseh sukkato kementzrif, a person makes his sukkah like a hat. What does it mean? Sheshtei dafnot ha'sukkot nog'ot zo bazo, that the two sides of the sukkah touch each other like an A-frame. It looks exactly like this, like a triangle. V'nimtza she'en lagag, and then you find out that this sukkah doesn't have a roof. It all gets to a point. והדפנות כולן או בחיקה נילו משון גם בסכך. And you're using actually the walls as the roof in an A-frame. או ששמחה לכותל, either this case, or you put the סכך leaning on a wall. שאיתה את הסכך על הכותל, והוא יורד בשיפו עד לארץ, which means it's just one side of the A-frame. The other wall is the house. Rabbi Eliezer posel mipnei she'en lagag. Rabbi Eliezer says this is not a kosher sukkah because you don't have a roof. There's no measurements for a roof over here. שלא ניכר מהו גג ומהו כותל. It cannot seen what is the wall, where does the wall finish, and where does the roof start. ואוהל משופע אין שמו אוהל. And it says, and this is not considered to be a tent or a dwelling place, אלא אם כן יש לו גג טפח. It has to have a minimum of a tefach as a roof in order to be kosher. So this has to be the minimum measurement for a roof. וחכמים מכשירים. But the sages say it is kosher. בגמרא מובארת ברייתא, and the Gemara brings a ברייתא, שבה נשנה להפך, that is exactly the opposite. Rabbi Eliezer מכשיר וחכמים פוסלים. Over there it says Rabbi Eliezer says it is kosher, and the sages says it is not kosher. ואומנם ההלכה היא, but the law for today is, שסוכה שאין לה גג פסולה, that a sukkah without a roof is not considered to be a sukkah. מחצלת קנים גדולה, הסעה לשכיבה. If a person makes a rug out of bamboo, but it is made for laying down, אם עשה בפירוש לשם שכיבה, he made it on a condition, he thought that it's going to be a mat to lay down on, then if it is a mat, it's considered to be a mattress, and it is a kli, it is a vessel, and the rule says that a vessel receives tuma. So therefore, since it is made for laying down, מקבל תuma, it does receive impurity. שכלי המיוחד לשכיבה הוא, because it is a mattress. It is a vessel that is made for laying down. And therefore, ואין משחכים בה. Therefore, one is not allowed to use it as סכך. כמו ששנינו לעיל משנה ד', just we explained before on משנה ד', שאין משחכים בדבר המקבל תומה, that you cannot use סכך, anything that receives impurity. לשיחוך. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara, but what happens if he had in mind for it to be סכך? בגמרא מבואר, or to be shade, שכאן מדובר מחצלת קטנים קטנה. But the Gemara says over here, we're talking about a small rug, a small rug of bamboo. שסתמה עשויה לשכיבה. Over here, you would assume that the person makes it, for sure it is for laying down. ולכן דין כלי עלת הוא מקבל תומה. And therefore it is always going to be considered receiving impurity, even if you had different intentions. ואין משחכים בה. And one shouldn't use it as a סכך. ובא התנא להשמיענו, and the Tana comes to teach us, שהיא מסעה בפירוש לשיחוך, that if you did it, and in your mind you said for sure this is going to be a סכך, משחכים בה ואינם מקבל תומה, even though it's a small size, that most of the people in the world use it as a mattress, since you are making it specifically for a סכך, then it is kosher. אבל מחצלת קנים גדולה, but a big rug, קשה היא, it's usually not made for people to lay down, וסתמה לשיחוך עשייה, so you can assume that with a big rug, people are making it for shade and not for laying down. הילקח אינה מקובלת תומה, so therefore a big rug, it doesn't receive impurity, as we say, because it is made for shade and not as a vessel. בסככים בה, and therefore you are allowed to use it as סכך material. וזהו ששנינו לעיל, and this is that we mentioned above, שדווקא היא מסעה בפירוש לשכיבה, We mentioned above that only if you're allowed to use it only if you had an intention to lay down. Only then it is receiving tuma ve'en mesachechim ba, and you're not using, and you cannot use it as schach. But if you just made it, so according to this, if you just made it a big rug is usually made for shade, and therefore you're allowed to use it even if it wasn't specifically made for schach. But a small rug, in order to be kosher, it needs to be specifically made for schach, only then it's kosher, otherwise it is going to be a vessel. A big rug, it's not a vessel until you specify that it is a vessel, because usually people don't lay on it. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with this, and he says, Achat ktana ve'achat gdola, it says, I don't care whether it is small, I don't care whether it is big. Ben machzeh ktana machzeh gdola, asa'ah leshkiva, if you made it for laying down, klomar, im asa'ah stam asa'ah leshkiva, if regular people make even big, Rabbi Eliezer says, even big rugs, they made it for laying down, ולכן היא מקבלת טומאה ואין משחכים בה, and therefore it receives impurity, and you're not allowed to use it as schach. That Rabbi Eliezer, he says, any size of rug, usually it is made for laying down. But if you'd had the intention, whether it was small, whether it was big, for schach, then you're allowed to use it as schach, and it doesn't receive impurity. Since it wasn't made for laying down, it was made for shade, it's not a vessel, and if it's not a vessel, therefore it doesn't receive impurity, and you are allowed to shade with it or to use it as schach.